future flights. Soon, other astronauts followed, and by the end of 1966, neutral buoyancy training had become a critical part of pre-mission operations. NASA still uses this kind of underwater training today, but recently the agency has also embraced an enhanced kind of simulation that goes far beyond practice in a pool. These simulations are called analog missions, and they are how the details of future human exploration to asteroids, the Moon, and Mars come into focus. Analogs, which are managed by space agencies and independent organizations around the world in places like Antarctica, Morocco, Moscow, and an underwater facility off Key Largo, let engineers test equipment and play out scenarios that might arise on expeditions in deep space. But increasingly, these faux space missions are also used to probe astronaut psychology and sociology, the most unpredictable element in any human expedition, to study coping strategies potentially useful on a long journey far away from Earth. In 2013, NASA launched its newest Mars analog mission, called Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, or HI-SEAS. The project emerged from the interests of Kim Binstead, Professor of Information and Computer Sciences at the University of Hawaii, and Gene Hunter, Professor of Biological and Environmental Engineering at Cornell. Both were curious about space food systems for Mars and about the food's impact on crew psychology. In 2012, they put out a call for almost astronauts to participate in a 4-month Mars mission. Binstead and Hunter wanted a crew who could technically qualify for spaceflight, according to NASA, in terms of education and experience. They were also looking for astronaut-like personalities, which, according to Binstead, feature thick skin, a long fuse, and an optimistic outlook. Nearly 700 people applied worldwide. At the time, I was a science journalist, and not necessarily an obvious choice for the mission. And yet I found myself on it. Between April and August 2013, I lived with 5 other not-really astronauts in isolation, all of us making various Martian concessions, like mostly bathing with wet wipes, foregoing real-time social media, and zero access to fresh fruits and vegetables. We lived inside a large, white, geodesic dome off an access road at 8,000 feet on the Hawaiian volcano of Mauna Loa. The scene was very red, very rocky, very Mars. There was limited electricity and water. We could only leave the dome wearing bulky, cumbersome, spacesuit-like outerwear. While we had an emergency cell phone, our sole regular contact with Earth was through email. And since Mars is extremely far away and photons can only fly so fast, our email transmissions were delayed by 20 minutes each way to mimic the actual communication lag to be experienced by Martian explorers. It wasn't your typical Hawaiian vacation. All for science, though. Binstead and Hunter's main research question regarding food was this: might it make sense to allow astronauts to cook their own meals once they've landed on Mars? Data has shown that astronauts on 6-month missions on the International Space Station eat less over time and lose weight, making them more prone to illness and injury. One reason for this could be that they grow bored with their limited selection of just add water and heat entrees. The consequences could be dire on a 2.5-year mission to Mars. But what if, once on Mars, back in touch with gravity, astronauts could cook their own meals? They'd have to use shelf-stable ingredients, of course, but given enough ingredients like freeze-dried beef, dehydrated onions, bell peppers, tomatoes, flour, rice, freeze-dried cheese, cashews, oils, spices, there could be thousands of recipes. Might these novel dishes help astronauts regain their appetites? In effect, Binstead and Hunter wanted to measure the importance of cooking and meals in isolation more generally, how food affects a crew's physical, mental, and social health. Imagine a homemade cake to commemorate a milestone, the successful landing, say, or a birthday, or a halfway point in the mission. Celebratory tacos, a vegetable stir-fry, fresh baked bread with butter and jam. On Earth, it might be obvious that food is more than just sustenance for a body, that it plays a psychological, social, and cultural role, and that it nourishes the spirit and our relationship with others. But to ask complex questions about the role of food on a Mars mission, and base a brand new Mars analog around these questions, it's pretty radical, actually. And so,